Right.
Okay, welcome everybody. I am Julie with Warwick's, and we are here tonight with Simon Stephenson discussing his new book. I'm going to get the title, Set My Heart to 5, which we're so excited to have you here. Oh, Jennifer is going to show us the book there. There it is. We're going to have a conversation with Jeniffer Thompson, who has done wonderful interviews for us since the pandemic shut down, that we've had to go to this virtual world. So Jeniffer, thank you for always coming in and doing these wonderful conversations with us. Yes. Just a little bit about Warwick's, for those of you that don't know who Warwick's is. We are located in San Diego, La Jolla, California. We are not the oldest bookstore in the country, but we are the oldest continuously family-owned bookstore in the country. So Nancy Warwick's great-great-grandfather started this in 1896 in Minnesota. Yeah, wow. And we've been in La Jolla since the 30s, and the building that we're at since the 50s. What I always like to say is any way that there's to get a book, you can get it from Warwick. So you can order online, you can call us, stop by the store. We have been open after the shutdown. Our governor let retail open back in May, so we have been open since May. Masks, social distancing. It's nothing like coming in and browsing a bookstore for books, so we'd love to see you at the store. So anyways, like I said, any way you can get a book, you can get it from Warwick. So please consider ordering Simon's book from us, but wherever you would like to order a book, order Simon's book. I always like to say that too. Yeah, there we go. There it is again. I always like to say this too. It's one of those things that we're in a voting season, and voting with your dollars also is a thing. And so when you buy an author's books, you're letting the publishers know that we want another book from that author. So
absolutely, yeah.
It's kind of that's my plug for you, Simon. I'll sell the books here for you.
Thank you. Wonderful. Yeah,
I will do that. So we're going to have a great event this evening. We'll do a little bit of a conversation. Simon's got a great presentation for us. We'll get back to some chatting. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Jeniffer Thompson. So Jeniffer is a personal branding expert, digital marketing strategist, and host of the Premise podcast. She is an author and speaker who delivers strategy-rich content and actionable tools that educate and empower authors. She and her husband, Chad, co-founded Monkey See Media in 2004 and have been creating award-winning book cover designs and author websites ever since. Jeniffer is a co-founder of the San Diego Writers Festival. She serves on the board of the San Diego Memoir Writers Association and is currently writing her own coming-of-age memoir. So with that, welcome, Jeniffer and Simon. Have a great conversation.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you so much. Simon, this is a real honor. I'm going to introduce you, and then we'll get started. Simon Stephenson is an author and screenwriter, and once upon a time in a galaxy far, far away, he was a medical doctor. Originally from Edinburgh in Scotland, he currently resides in Los Angeles. He enjoys all kinds of books and most kinds of movies, but apparently not horror. I understand. I'm kind of with you on that one, by the way.
Great, thank you. Good, you're my people.
Totally. And loves just about everything that has four legs. Well, except those chairs in your dentist's office. I understand the waiting room. You don't like those chairs.
Any of the chairs. I mean, the waiting room, the real problem is the chair in the thing. But you're right, that probably doesn't have four legs, does it? That's probably just more like on a thing.
I think it has like a one thing that goes up and down, like you'd lift a car.
That's right. So in my bio, I made a terrible error.
I think we're going to have to fix your bio. I think it's the dentist, right? It's the dental thing that you have the problem with. All right.
Exactly. It's a polite way of saying I'm terrified of my dentist.
Which leads to a question I'll ask later. Simon Stephenson has a spirit animal, which happens to be P22, a local, you say friendly, but I'm not sure I agree with that, neighborhood mountain lion in Los Angeles. By the way, I'm a huge fan of the puma, and I track the P22 as well. So that's pretty cool.
Well, we better talk about that. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Stevenson's first book is a memoir, Let Not the Waves of the Sea. It's about the loss of his older brother, Dominic, in the Indian Ocean tsunami. Set My Heart to 5 is his first novel. Here it is again, folks. This is a fantastic book. The story of a dentist, Android. I love that you chose for him to be a dentist when you don't like going to the dentist. So Jared is a dentist. He is a bot, and he begins to experience feelings. The story unfolds in 2054 in a world where humans have managed to lock themselves out of the internet by forgetting the last names of their favorite teachers and their first pets. Havoc ensues. It's kind of a love letter to feelings, if you will, and to the movies many of us grew up on and the American West. So Simon Stephenson, thank you so much for joining me here today. I'm excited to have this conversation with you and talk about this really wonderful book. I loved it.
Oh.
All right. My first question. Now, this is a really important question, and I need you to be honest with me. I promise I won't tell anyone. Are you a robot?
It's a really good question. I'm worried that I might be because often sort of the question that I get in interviews is people say, how did you imagine, how awkward this robot would feel and how he could be sometimes so lonely and sometimes he could try and be funny, it could be totally backfire. And I was kind of have to say, well, I mean, I feel like a lot of that might be drawn from life, So,
Yeah.
so I'd love to think maybe we all have a bit of that, but it's possible I have a bit more than some people of the android in me.
You did such a lovely job of bringing Jared to life and making him seem human, but just awkward enough. I think one of the things you did really well, and I know you must have done this on purpose, but I'll ask you, is he didn't speak using contractions. He didn't say can't. He said, I cannot. So the language was very precise and very specific, which I think lent to the bot part of Jared. Was that on purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you picked up on that. Yeah, I think so as you say, the book's all written in Jared's voice. He's narrating the book, and one of his things in his programming is he's programmed to seem as reassuringly human as possible. And of course, we probably know as humans that an android pretending to be human, there's nothing reassuring about that, but
right.
that's his programming. And so you get this thing where he tries to say, what he thinks is slang because he's heard people say, oh, I can't. And, but he hears, I cannot. And so then, he sort of enthusiastically exclaims, I cannot, quite a lot sometimes.
And he exclaims a lot. He uses, ha, and he uses, exclamation points a lot and excellent language. He's very precise, but he's also incredibly loving and kind and clever and funny. And, he's very human in the way he approaches and the way he looks at things. And I think it kind of shines a light on, who we are as humans. And I think it allowed you to kind of make fun of us, to make fun of humans and all the silly things we do, the ridiculousness. I really appreciated that. This must have been a really fun book to write.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think like all of us, I probably spend a lot of time wondering about some of the weird things that we do as humans. And, I don't mean things that other people do. I mean things that I do as well.
Sure, yeah.
And I think sort of when you, sometimes when you stop and think about well, why are we doing this?
Right.
This odd activity or whatever it is we're doing for recreation that week. So yeah, the chance to just kind of turn the camera around and say, well, if, I always loved Seinfeld has this old joke about if an alien comes to Earth and sees a person walking a dog, but what they'll see is one species, basically
leading another.
Yeah, leading another, and then the other one picking up the poop of the other one. They'll be like, well, this species is the overlord, and let's
clearly
let's make our peace with them. And I think that's quite a fun perspective to take, of just kind of looking at things and saying, well, what are we doing here?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many times where I stopped and I had to reread it. And I'm like, yeah, why do we do that? I laughed out loud so many times in this book.
Oh,
one of my favorite pieces was when you're talking about Midwesterners. In fact, let me see if I can find it. Oh, it's somewhere in my notes. You talk about the politeness. Yes, he describes human interaction as a never-ending arms race of politeness, and I completely laughed out loud. My husband's from Iowa. I have so many friends from the Midwest. I'm like, that is so true. This being polite, and how Jared was programmed to be polite, but he understands the reasons and why it's kind of silly. Like, we're not honest necessarily. We use this politeness to sort of, stumble through our relationships. And it is just like an arms race in many ways, right?
Yeah. The people are always trying to trying to out-polite each other.
Totally, yeah.
There's a great episode of The Office, I think, where this happens, where the characters Dwight and Andy have a whole day. Is it Dwight and Andy? Dwight and Andy, and they have this whole day of, trying to be more polite than one another. I'm sure that was probably in the back of my head at some point when I was thinking about the oddity of politeness.
I felt like, you paid homage to so many really wonderful movies and books and, things in, that we've all experienced, and that's part of what made this book so great. I want to talk a little bit about this Mistopia. It's set in 2054. And can you tell us about the world building? I know you have a slideshow for us. So maybe this is a good time to to take us to 2054 and the place.
Sure. I will do that. Yeah. Absolutely. The idea of 2054. So, my sort of conception of the future, I think, is it's probably a bit more hopeful than some of the conceptions out there. So you know that, like,
Thank you for that.
Reading, because I love reading the dystopias, and I love, say, reading the Hunger Games, and then when you put it down and you realize that you're not actually going to be made to fight the children from the other districts for your survival. It was just a book you were reading. Like that's a lovely sense of relief when you put that book down. But equally, I kind of feel that there's a lot of bleak stuff in the literature around dystopias, and obviously we have a huge amount of issues in our world right now, and I think I didn't want to write a dystopia, and I didn't really want to, I probably don't want to read one right now, in truth. And so I'm calling it not a dystopia, I'm calling it a mistopia. And the idea is that everything's just kind of missed its mark, and it's gone wrong in a like a really human way. And we have this phrase in Britain, which is that if things go wrong, it's more likely to be cock up rather than conspiracy. And with Boris Johnson as our prime minister, it's absolutely true. That, people are always speculating that he's running these Machiavellian schemes around Brexit and stuff, but it's not. It's just it's just messing up and not paying attention at the crucial points, I think. So the idea is that in 2054, there's no sort of terrible, sinister, government society. There's just humans have just messed up in the way that we always do. So I think, as you mentioned, Elon Musk has incinerated the moon. Humans have locked themselves out of the internet. But we're still going on. And one of the
we find a way.
Exactly, life finds a way, or humans find a way. And so one of the things about 2054, and I genuinely don't think that this is actually unlikely, is I think we will have androids. And I have to confess, I wasn't like I liked it, but I wasn't a huge science fiction person before this. So I had to educate myself a bit to find out that an android specifically is a robot who looks human. So an android is a robot who can pass for human. And I think what that means is that when we think of androids, we think they're going to look like this. Let's see this. So we think they're going to look like this. So you wouldn't have any trouble with seeing that android. You would know he was an android straight away. I think, unfortunately, they're going to look a lot more like this. Which, of course, is not to say that they're going to be like, they're all going to be clones of me. I just mean that, they're going to look average and ordinary. And if you see them in the street, you wouldn't necessarily know. And, that being so, I think they will live in, very ordinary places like this place here, which is, this is Ypsilanti in Michigan, which is where Jared, the narrator of my book, lives. And so if you imagine that you're just, in this very ordinary Midwestern town in the year 2054, the cars will probably look a bit different, but apart from that, probably quite similar. And so I'm just going to read how Jared introduces himself in the book. He says, "Hi, my name is Jared. I am sincerely pleased to meet you. Also, I am a bot. Unless you have been living under a rock in North Korea or New Zealand, you of course know what a bot is. Nonetheless, I am programmed to relay the following dialogue to each new human I encounter. Please do not be fooled by my human-like appearance. I am a mere bot. I do not have feelings or anything else that might be misconstrued as so. Instead, I've been programmed to a high level of proficiency in dentistry. Should you have any concerns, please immediately report me to the Bureau of Robotics." But humans rarely find this information calming. Instead, they see a fellow human standing in front of them claiming that he is not a human. This bamboozles them. It often bamboozles them so profoundly that they exclaim, "But you look so human." I then patiently explain to them what they anyway already know, that my body looks human because it is indeed a human body. It is engineered from DNA and constructed of cells the exact same way their own body is. It can be injured or killed in all the same comically outlandish ways any other human body can. Yet I am definitely not human, because the precious thing that sets humans apart is their feelings. And as a bot, I am specifically designed and programmed to be incapable of feelings. I can no more feel than a toaster. BTW. That is a hilarious joke, because the programming language I run on was in fact first developed many years ago for use in the domestic toaster. And so I guess what you might have picked up in that reading is a couple of things, and one is that Jared's a dentist. I think we'd mentioned that. So he's an android dentist. And the reason that Jared's a dentist is because when we have androids, we're going to make them do the jobs that we don't want to do. And top of that list for me is being a dentist. It's probably the job I would least like to do. But the flip side of it is that they're going to be brilliant dentists because they don't have any feelings. So a human dentist can be kind of distracted if you complain too much. If he's trying to take your wisdom tooth out and you keep complaining it hurts, at some point he's going to stop and tell you to come back next week. But the android dentist is not going to care. He's just going to get that tooth out. So that's one advantage they have. But the other thing about androids is they're going to be better than us at everything, right? Like I think they will they'll be better at maths, at science, at memory, at language, and it doesn't leave us humans much. And I think the thing it leaves us, the only sort of theoretical advantage we have over them is feelings and emotion. So we're therefore going to be very protective of our feelings and emotions because they're the things that make us humans special. And what that means is that if any android shows any hint of feeling any emotion or he's going to be in trouble and he's going to be either wiped or incinerated. And the organization that does that is an organization called the Bureau of Robotics. And my model for that was kind of the DMV. So slow and bureaucratic and clunking, but yet they will get you in the end.
Right.
So they're not without teeth. They just, they're slightly comical, but they're a real threat. So, and this is a real problem for Jared because he shares a building with a human doctor. Doctors are still humans because emotions and feelings. And so one thing leads to another, and the doctor begins to suspect that Jared might be depressed. And so Jared says, well, that's ridiculous. I can't be because, I don't have feelings. And so the doctor says, but I think you do. And so the doctor's very clever, and he suggests to Jared that they do an experiment. And because Jared's an android, he's going to love experiments. I mean, that's what they love. And again, this is maybe one of those bits we're talking about where it's a bit too close to me because I love experiments. I'm a science person at heart. So they agree on this experiment. And the experiment that they agree is that Jared's going to go and see a movie because that's where humans often feel things. And so one thing just to mention about 2054 is there's really going to be two kinds of movies. There's going to be, the big blockbusters that play at the what are currently called the multiplexes, but by then will be called the megaplexes. And they're going to show these just giant Marvel extravaganzas that are 6 hours long, and the bad guys are always killer robots. And so Jared says, look, I don't want to see one of those because that's not fun for me. And the doctor says, no, there is this other kind of movie that still plays at old repertory cinemas, And the movies they play there are the movies that have survived humans locking themselves out of the internet and losing all the culture that was stored digitally. So what that means is the movies that are going to be left behind are the things that were stored on film, and particularly the things that they had a lot of prints of. Today, if you go see a house film, you might go and see some obscure French documentary, and you'll come back and tell all your friends how clever you are because you saw an obscure 4-hour-long French documentary in black and white. And, you know, in 2054, you'll do the same thing, but you'll have seen Titanic, you know, and you'll come back and tell all your friends you saw the sophisticated film from the 90s that, you know, they wouldn't understand, but it's a great piece of art. So Jared goes to see a movie, and if you can bear with me, I'll try and make this work with the technology, where what will try and just give us a little bit experience of Jared. He'll go to a theater that looks like this. So like an old, you know, tumble down repertory theater. And what I'll do, I'll just play a tiny bit of the movie he sees, and then I'll read his reaction.
What can you say about a 25-year-old girl who died? That she was beautiful and brilliant? That she loved Mozart and Bach? The Beatles? And me?
When the house lights came up, I discovered that my shirt was soaking wet. This was a mystery. After all, I had not purchased a soda because there were calorific sugar water. I could see no evidence of a leak coming from the ceiling. Bots can produce tears only in response to a physical insult, such as a flying fragment of wisdom tooth. It took me some time to deduce that the liquid must have been my own tears. Even though nobody in the auditorium had been drilling teeth, every other possibility had been eliminated. The only logical conclusion was therefore that the Grand Theatre must recently have been cleaned with a powerful solvent that had irritated my eyes. I estimated the volume of my tears to be approximately 26 milliliters. It must have been a powerful solvent indeed. On the automatic bus back home, I noticed some words stuck at the forefront of my word cloud. What can you say about a 25-year-old girl who died? That she was beautiful and brilliant? That she loved Mozart and Bach and the Beatles? And me? The character called Oliver had spoken these words right at the start of the movie. At the time, it had seemed absurd. How could there be nothing else to say about a human who had lived for only a quarter of a century and then died? There had to be more. What was her name? Where had she lived? How had she fared in the great human zero-sum game? Why had she died so young? Had she been killed by the most likely culprit, an automobile? And yet, as I rode the automatic bus home that night, I found that I entirely agreed with Oliver. There was nothing more to say. In 100 minutes, the old movie has said everything that could possibly be said about an entire human lifetime. Nonetheless, I could not stop thinking about Oliver and Jenny all the way back to Ypsilanti. So that's Jared's first trip to the cinema, and that kind of provoked some feelings in him. He goes back to the doctor, and the doctor explains that it was a blind experiment, that he hadn't told Jared the movie was a tearjerker, and Jared had really been crying. So this kind of opens the door to Jared beginning to feel. The doctor then gives him something that looks like this, which I know from my past life as a children's doctor, where I work sometimes with kids with Asperger's syndrome and autism. It's called a feelings wheel, and the idea is that if you're having trouble deciphering your emotions, you can pick out what you're feeling. And of course, Jared, you know, loves this and has a great time. investigating his feelings. But of course, I mentioned about this terrible organization called the Bureau of Robotics, and they get, wind of this, that Jared is seeing movies and feeling things. So they come after him, and without giving too much away, Jared decides that the way to solve all this is to write a movie of his own. And he sets out on this adventure, and unfortunately, it's not too long before he realizes that the algorithm for making a movie in Hollywood looks a bit like this. Oops, what's happened there? Yeah, looks like this. And this is kind of based on my own personal experience of having been working out here as a screenwriter for seven or 8 years. That you can see, I think, that this algorithm is if you're the writer, it's fairly flawed, because whatever decision anyone makes, it always involves replacing the writer. And so that's sort of that's one of the challenges that Jared encounters on his way.
I wondered, when I was reading that, I know that you're a screenplay writer, and this book reads partially like a novel and partially like a screenplay. So you really brought your experience as a screenplay writer to the book. Did you intend it to be a novel at first, or did you ever consider it as a screenplay? How was that process?
That's a really good question. And I think if I was a smarter human, I would have worked that out earlier on, that it would be, to my advantage to write a novel that might end up being a film someday. I can genuinely say that wasn't the plan at all. So as you mentioned, I'd published this memoir way back in 2011. And when I finished that, I sat down to write a novel, because my understanding was that writers wrote novels. That was what we were supposed to do. And now I've published a memoir. Well, I was a big, important writer, and therefore I was going to write a novel. And I couldn't do it. I just, I tried several times and it failed. So the screenwriting was, a very fortunate diversion I was lucky enough to take. But, through all those years, I was always trying to write the novel. And how ironic, of course, that the novel ended up being about screenwriting, and may someday, if we're lucky, end up being a movie of its own. So I wasn't smart enough to have conceived that plan, because I do hear it sometimes. I've heard about, I can't remember what they are off the top of my head, but I've definitely heard of a couple of surprising books that started out as screenplays that no one wanted, and then they turned into books, and then everyone wanted them, and then they became screenplays that everyone wanted. So
In Set My Heart to 5, Jared decides that he wants to move to Los Angeles and become a screenplay writer. Yeah. And I wonder how much of his story follows your story in terms of learning to be a screenplay writer and, learning how to write a novel and then using both. I mean, he's literally told in the book, Jared is told, well, use both. Write it as a screenplay and write it as a novel. So I wonder how much of the experience literally was your experience. And I mean, you used to be a medical doctor. So kind of tell us how this came to be that you went from medicine to being a writer.
Sure. So I always wrote along the way, and I think one thing that's very different in the UK is medicine is you go to medical school as your undergraduate degree. So you embark on that career when you're 17 or 18 years old in Scotland, which means that you choose that career when you're 15 or 16 years old. Which I think if you're a smart, precocious child who knows what the world is, it's probably sensible to make that decision at that point. If you're me and the first series of ER starts just at the wrong time on television, and you say, "Oh, I'll do that. That's what I'll do."
Right.
And so because even when I was going to university, it was like, am I going to do medicine or English, which is obviously quite an unusual. I guess it's less unusual these days, but at the time it was quite an unusual split. So. I went to medical school, I worked as a doctor, I always wrote along the way, and actually it was in medical school was when I started writing properly, and I would always enter every competition I could see. I was quite competitive like that, but it was also, I felt like that other bit of my brain needed to be exercised, the creative bit a bit. And I think that's quite common. There's lots of doctors that have sidelines in sort of creative pursuits. Yeah, so, and when I was 24, 25, I'd only been working as a doctor, and I took 6 months out to write my great literary book of short stories, because what the world needed from me was a great literary book of short stories when I was 24, 25. And of course, thankfully they didn't. None of them, it didn't happen. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here today, probably.
Right.
So that was a salutary lesson. But one of them got made into a short film, and it kind of did okay. And from the back of that, I got some work writing television. So, and it wasn't the glory days of British television, and it wasn't the glory days of my writing. But it was a living, and I was writing and earning money by writing, which was such a thrill. And then my life changed. I lost my brother. You mentioned it, in the tsunami in Thailand in 2004, and so I went back to medicine at that point. And I wrote a memoir, the memoir about losing him, and I kind of wrote it in the downtime from, just the evenings and weekends. I mean, mainly I worked in the hospital at the evenings and weekends, so the downtime in the day and the daytimes. And so I guess that one, it came out, and yeah, I thought I was going to write this big, this great novel, and it just didn't happen. I couldn't make it happen. But what I did write was, by that time I was a children's doctor. And I wrote a screenplay about a depressed children's doctor who hated his job and desperately needed a change. And I don't know where that idea popped into my head. It just came like the purest of creative magic. And that weirdly opened up all these doors out here. And suddenly I went from, I couldn't really get arrested in London. And then, I came out here for a few meetings, and kind of, overnight, I had a new career. I mean, I should stress it's never happened like that since. I've written a lot of screenplays since, and that one seemed to have particularly got everyone excited in a way that I haven't necessarily managed to recapture that buzz. So, but yeah, it led to like a fairly consistent screenwriting work, and so yeah, kept me busy.
Well, I wonder, what do you enjoy writing more, novels or screenplays?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think they're pretty different, and I think they're not different in terms of, because obviously they're laid out differently on the page, but that whole process is, you're still basically just sitting by yourself in a room, and I think they have different things. So what I love about screenwriting is genuinely the collaboration, and if you get to work with people who are real collaborators, it's such a dream. Unfortunately in Hollywood, I showed that algorithm of the screenwriter, and it's not, so it doesn't necessarily always go smoothly. You don't necessarily get to work with people who are necessarily collaborators every time.
Sure.
But it's much more. I mean, social is the wrong word, but it's just, I guess it's less lonely. Because you're going to meetings and you're talking to people, and people are reading things and giving you feedback, and all of that stuff. So that bit I love of it. But then writing the book has been, it's really nice because you have less people telling you what to do. If you work on a big movie, inevitably, there's a lot at stake. So of course, the people that are putting up the money are going to have strong opinions about everything. And so yeah, I think the dream might be to do both. Like what's happened with this one is, we were I was lucky enough that it got optioned for potentially being a film, and I've been doing the screenplay of that, and it's been this wonderful experience where, because the book is already written, I'm sort of way less protective of it than I might be of, for instance, the script that I've just written myself. Because when you write the script, you're like, oh well, this, if you change the whole thing, then this will no longer exist.
No one will know.
No one will ever know, right? I think they both have their benefits and their challenges, and one simple thing is, on a purely practical level, a screenplay tends to run, like a movie screenplay, 15,000 words, 20,000 words if you're feeling verbose.
Wow.
My novel is 95,000 words. So just in terms of the commitment and the unwieldiness of you can do a pass on your screenplay once you've written it in a day or two, but every time you dive into the manuscript of your novel or your memoir, it's a month-long undertaking.
Yeah. You know, in the book, in Set My Heart to Five, there's a point where I think Jared and his doctor friend, are watching the Oscars, I think. And this man, or maybe it was a woman, goes on stage to accept the award and no one claps. And Jared's like, wait a minute, why is no one clapping? And the doctor says, oh, that's just the screenwriter. No one cares about the screenwriter. You know, they care about the director and they care about the actors, right? And I thought, you know, here you are in this situation where you've been a screenwriter, and it's true. You never hear about the screenwriter, you hear about the directors. So now it's like you get to have a little bit of glory in being an author. In terms of, you know, you're the mastermind, the man behind the book. It's all you. So has that been kind of fun? I mean, it's been out since, I think, September 1st.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's really nice. I think, like it's interesting because I think that screenwriting hierarchy thing, it's particularly acute in film. So what they classically say is they say film is a director's medium and television is a screenwriter's medium. So I think you do sometimes, you know, because you read about showrunners and you hear about showrunners, and they're normally the head writers. For whatever reason, mainly because I'm an idiot, I chose to go down a film route. So, you know, I think my TV colleagues have a better time. But all that said, I mean, you know, great directors, you know, they have a skill set that I don't have, and you know, absolutely, like, you know, so much respect for the work they do. And I think, you know, there's a lot of people that, you know, it's absolutely right that, you know, they have that level of say. And, you know, if I have a qualm with it, I think that sometimes in the film industry, we lose sight of the best things tend to be collaborations. You know, we're very keen to label everyone a genius, and you know, and I think there are those individuals out there, but I think there's less of them than maybe we think. So yeah, having like having my book out and, you know, getting to talk about, like it's a real privilege, because you know, and you know, also just simply for it to have been published. So you know, like the movies, they say, you know, the average time a movie takes to get made is 7 years. You know,
wow.
Lots of them, like famously, like Dallas Buyers Club, if you remember that movie from a few years ago, big hit, everyone loved it. That was in development for like 25 years.
Wow.
Wow. You know, and I think I've read that, like, the script wasn't vastly different from the one they started with. You know, so imagine writing something great 25 years ago and having to wait, you know, all that time for the world to catch up. So I think, you know, and I'm sure so many writers will hear this and laugh, but like, from my perspective with film, where everything takes so long, there's genuinely kind of an immediacy in publishing a book because it only takes 2 or 3 years. So yeah, that's been very pleasant.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, I'm glad to hear you say that, because, you know, as a writer, we always feel like, gosh, it takes forever for it to finally come out. I would like you to read another passage, if you don't mind. Yeah. It's on page 48. Great. Start at the second paragraph and read to the bottom. Your reading of Jared is so beautiful, and I loved this scene.
Great. Okay, so here we go. Automobiles, which were also known as motor cars, were the precursor to our driverless Ubers of today. They were made of steel, weighed up to several tons, and were powered by highly combustible fuel sources. After a few hours of basic instruction, humans were legally permitted to self-pilot these vehicles at speeds of up to 70 miles an hour. Can you guess what happened? Of course you can. The era of the motor car was an era of motor carnage. Over 1 million humans were killed globally by automobiles every year. 1 million every year. And how did humans respond to this self-inflicted genocide? By building ever more automobiles that could go ever faster and carry ever larger quantities of highly combustible fuel. Such bold counter-tuition and relentless determination to withstand all logic and reason truly make the automobile the apotheosis of the great human century. Humans, I cannot.
I cannot. I read that to my husband because I was like, look, what is wrong with us? But you know what I really love is there are Ubers, driverless Ubers. And in New York, they're all painted yellow for nostalgic reasons. And they're programmed to honk often. That made me laugh out loud. Anyone who's been to New York is like, of course, like the nostalgia that you lend to this book is really fun. There's so many scenes like that made me laugh out loud, and it was a really fun read. And I was surprised that it's 95,000 words because I read it fairly quickly. It's definitely a page turner. It's got action. I mean, Jared is on a mission to save himself. He's discovering himself. He's like this very naive, innocent creature who is viewing this ridiculous world and all these ridiculous things that we do as humans, but yet it's a love letter to feelings and to humankind in general. And I can't recommend it enough. It's really lovely.
Thank you.
I want to ask you one more question because I know we're coming to an end. So in the book, there is a scene where Dr. Glundenstein is talking with Jared, our character, who is still a dentist at the time, and he loves to drink Japanese whiskey, but he calls it scotch. And Jared is bamboozled, which is one of my favorite words in the book, because he inexplicably refers to Japanese whiskey as scotch, which it is not. Scotch is from Scotland. And now that I know that you're from Scotland, this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But here's my question. Do you drink Japanese whiskey?
So I mean, I do if it's what's around, and I think it's famously delicious, and I think actually. I think like the last few years, it actually tends to win the awards, right? So like, whatever the Oscars of the whiskey world are, I think Japan is winning them. So
yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny with the word Scotch though, because we don't necessarily. We call the drink
whiskey,
Scotch.
Right?
Yeah. But we sort of tolerate the word Scotch for it. But sometimes this thing happens, and one of my friends actually just asked me something about being Scotch the other day, and we get very I don't know what the word is. We get very
irritable.
Yeah. And national characteristics. We're kind of not necessarily known for our patience. I think it was J.M. Barrie said that it's very hard to tell the difference between. It's never hard to tell the difference between a ray of light and a Scotsman with a grudge, and so yeah, we don't like Scotch as a designation of our national of who we are, but we'll drink any kind of it, and we'll call it.
But you're okay with the drink being called Scotch?
Oh, of course, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Well, my favorite Japanese whiskey is Yamazaki, which used to be really inexpensive, and it's gotten quite expensive because everyone's discovered how good it is. It's a single
malt. They won
malt.
all the awards, and yeah, exactly, yeah. Wow. So how did you find your way to it? It was.
My husband's.
Oh,
so
really?
I'm a hillbilly by breeding, I should say. My daddy's from Oklahoma, and so I grew up drinking more whiskey, kind of the yucky ones, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And my husband is a Scotch drinker, so when I met him, he was all about the Oban and the Lagavulins.
Good pronunciation, because a lot of people will pronounce that Oban, but you hear it perfectly there. I'm very impressed.
Thank you. So I've really come to love Scotch, and Lagavulin is my absolute favorite, but I love Hibiki, I love Yamazaki, and the smokiness of it is wonderful. So I've come around because of my husband. It's taken a couple years.
That's completely fair. I think, there's plenty of people in the world, and I think we should all be drinking whiskey from everywhere. Why not?
So I would like you and I to go to a Gillian Welch concert and have a glass of Yamazaki or Lagavulin at some point when all of this social distancing is over. Julie, you want to come?
Wonderful. And
I'm coming too.
This sounds fantastic. She can play some of her, her Dust Bowl ballads that she has in the back catalog there, and we'll get some of the. Some of the old music. Wonderful.
There's my hillbilly, background.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. I love this book. Folks, Set My Heart to 5. Get it at Warwick's. Wonderful book. Thank you so much,
Great.
Simon.
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and thank you to Warwick for having us. It's been wonderful.
Absolutely. So we did put out onto Facebook that if anybody had a question, that we'd bring it in. And so Tracy Thompson did have a question for you.
Oh, hurrah.
So, yeah, so she was, so sorry, Tracy, if you're watching this, you're getting your question answered. So she said, oh, boo, because of the technical issues. But she said she'd like to ask what books shaped Simon as a writer?
Wonderful. It's a really great question. It's funny. So one of the reviews for this book mentioned Terry Pratchett, and I adored. I had this phase, between the ages of maybe like 10 and 14 or 15, where I just he wrote an awful lot, and I read all of it, and I can remember queuing up at the bookstore for on the first day of publication, and but I really sort of, I think then, you get into your teens, and I got distracted by the Beat Generation, and that took me on this whole other, long and meandering path. And I genuinely, I don't think I've, a terrible admission, but I don't think I've read Terry Pratchett since then. And then another review mentioned him as well. And I thought that's really interesting that, those formative things that you read at that age, come back to you 20 years later. So I need to go back and reread it all. But it sounds like, I think for this particular book, it feels like Terry Pratchett might be the key influence.
That's
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Have you been reading a lot during the shutdown, or are you like a lot of people had a hard time concentrating at first? But
a bit of both. I've been reading a few different things, actually. I've been reading this one by Nancy Pearl, the Writer's Library, which I'm sure you guys haven't worked. It's just come out, and that's been really fun, because I think in this moment when, some of our attention spans aren't sort of, the thought of diving into a 600-page novel is sometimes tricky. And this one is great because she went around the country. You guys probably know who Nancy Pearl is. She's on NPR and all that stuff. And she went around the country interviewing different writers to find out actually the question that we were just asked, the books that shaped them. So it's a really fascinating insight into, Jennifer, I'm sure you can relate to this. It's always really interesting just finding out other people's craft and like how they do it and what their habits are, and so that's been something I've really been enjoying lately. Yeah.
And didn't she interview you?
She did. Yeah.
I tried to find it, but it didn't seem to be live. It was a live event, but it wasn't recorded. It didn't seem.
I don't know. Yeah.
I would like to see that interview, but that's pretty cool.
It was fun.
Yeah, that is one of those things that it's the process. People are fascinated by the process. It's, that's one of the questions that usually always comes up, like, are you a plotter? Are you, what do you do? So I'll ask, do you write every day? Do you get up in there, or do you just write when you have like the inspiration?
Yeah, absolutely. So I write every day, and I start, it's the way I start the day. Like, because I feel like if I don't, then I just get lost in emails and whatever else. So I start the day with it, and I try and keep going for as long as I can until you end up having to go to the DMV or whatever terrible
or the dentist,
right? Or the dentist.
Exactly. Yeah. My two favorite places. Yeah, exactly.
And one final question: the title. Was that a working title? Was it always the title? What tell us about the title?
Yeah. It's a great question. So the work just mentioned that. So the title "Set My Heart to 5" comes from Jared is an android, and so he runs on an operating system like most computers. And I learned fairly on in the process that this is true, that the code, this sort of code for computers, tends to be cut and pasted between things. So like, the code in your DVD player probably is, adapted from the one that's in your car. It makes sense. And so Jared, again, trying to be, we spoke about him trying to be reassuringly human. And he's learned somewhere along the way that humans like to talk about their ancestors or their grandparents. And so he's always talking about his noble ancestor, the toaster, because his code was originated for domestic appliances. So, and for a long time, the title of the book was Set My Heart to 10. And then I realized that my toaster only went up to 5. And I did a bit of investigation and I discovered that this was, fairly, the 3 toasters I had access to at that time, they all only went up to 5. So I decided that Jared's way of expressing maximum enthusiasm was going to be by saying, set it to 5. And of course, he's developing feelings, so set my heart to 5. I've subsequently found out that this toasters going to 5 is a slightly soft rule. It seems like the majority of them go to 5, but I've encountered people have been sending me, my toaster goes up to 6 or my toaster goes up to 7. Someone sent me a toaster that went to 3 and I just had nothing to say to that.
Of course, yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know that technically a toaster if it only goes up to 3.
Doesn't even get breath.
Yeah, like exactly, yeah. So yeah, that's where the title comes from, and as Jennifer was kindly holding up, we have a cover that that was a challenge because of course the challenge was the brief was basically a toaster, but make it futuristic, which is a tough sell, I think.
Yeah.
No, I think they did a great job. The cover is really good.
I think they did a great job. Yeah.
I think they did a great job. Well, this has been a great conversation. I so appreciate you spending some time with us, Simon. I know during the shutdown and to release a book during COVID, it's got to be so hard for everybody. So we're trying to champion as many of those voices out there as we can.
Well, thank you. I'm so grateful for the support, and I'm not too far away, so I'm looking forward to getting down there before too long, and
yes,
come and say hello.
And when we can gather with more than 10 people, you come down and we'll all go out and we'll all have that whiskey.
Oh, even better.
Scotch.
Wonderful.
Or scotch.
Wonderful.
Or whatever. All right. So we're going to say goodnight to everybody. And
Brilliant.
Again, the book is available at Warwick's, but wherever you buy a book, buy the author's books. It's important.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Simon. Thank you, Jennifer.
Great.
Thank you.